Fisheries inspectors are more often on duty at night when illegal netting and clandestine fishing is at its height. The officers put in long hours and often there's an element of danger, especially under cover of darkness. The department has added 2 new inspectors to the team of 6 covering Newcastle and Lake Macquarie. Among other duties, they'll provide backup for those dangerous confrontations with illegal operators. Senior Inspector Bob Spring says the new appointments couldn't have arrived at a busier time.
I see an ever-increasing amount of work through all of our areas in New South Wales. Here is no different. An area such as this, to provide a service, we need the staff to be able to do so.
The department conducted an Easter enforcement aimed at holiday fishing enthusiasts. The pleasing results indicate that the public is observing size and catch limits, but the changing season will bring a new wave of operations aimed at divers and lobster poachers, as well as continuing a public information campaign. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Scott Riley from Sydney could say he had a very productive Easter. In the Tari tournament, Riley took out the major matches, including the Open men's singles on forfeit after opponent Michael Fury withdrew with injury. He was also victorious in the Open doubles with partner Mark Jepson and in the Open mixed doubles with Nicole Omans, also from Sydney. It was the 9th year the Easter tournament has been played, with winners taking home more than $2,000 in prizes. In other matches, local coach Anne Hamilton won the ladies' singles from Nicole Omans, and Jamie McDonald scooped the special men's singles, the 18 boys singles and the 18 boys doubles.
The Port Stephens Shire Council has come to the end of the road with its share of the government's 3 cents a litre over 3 years road subsidy. More than $10 million has been spent in the past 3 years. Now the council is after $14.7 million for the next 3.
What we're saying is over the next 3 years, we need at least $14.7 million to maintain our roads to a basic standard of safety for the people of Port Stephens and the visitors that come here.
Roads are the Shire's biggest single outlay. At least $20 million of ratepayers' money will go toward maintaining council roads alone. But they're also the area's lifeblood. 8,000 cars use the government-funded Nelson Bay Road each day, and up to 12,000 in holiday peaks. The council's road priorities include dual carriageway and overtaking lane plans for the Nelson Bay Road. The Roads and Traffic Authority has not yet finalised its budget for road funding in the area. Council considers the road improvements vital to its tourist development infrastructure.
Only last week we were taken to task in the Hunter by the Premier, Mr Greiner, because we lack initiative. I'm saying if people have the initiative to establish these facilities here, then it's up to the state government to have the initiative to build the roads to allow them to get there.
Now that they have use of the Tuncurry property, the area's teenagers must decide what they want to do with it. Council has made the building available, but the young people will be putting their hard-won funds towards decorating it and making it work.
They're very keen to have a social venue where they can have a pool table, video games, a television, somewhere to come, relax, chat, have a cup of coffee.
A Youth Week dance and car washes have yielded $2,000 already, and youth workers say this reflects the eagerness of those involved to carve out a place in the town. The new centre held an open day for young people to field their ideas on the development.
Today is a chance for the teenagers of the area to come in, have a look at what the house is like and advise us on how we should equip the house, how we should decorate it, what type of activities and programs they'd like to see go on here.
Adults will be invited to inspect the centre and share their opinions on its uses at a later date. The planned Tallwoods by the Sea development features 105 rural residential lots as well as smaller residential blocks. Its centrepiece is an 18-hole golf course and clubhouse surrounded by villa houses, forest cottages and a motel. Local interest groups and the Aboriginal Lands Council have been consulted, with the Taree City Council requesting a fauna impact study. According to the developer, the construction will not have a significant effect on the habitat of protected fauna, but Council will consult with the National Parks and Wildlife Service about the impact of the development on flora and fauna. The plan for Tallwoods, to be built between Tallwood Drive and Blackhead Road, will also be considered by the Departments of Agriculture, Health, Soil Conservation and the Environmental Protection Agency.
It's taken 2 years of planning, 12 months of construction and $13 million to get a multi-purpose facility many say was desperately needed by a city the size of Newcastle. Already the home of Newcastle's basketball team, the Falcons, it's soon to become the venue of national and international acts and exhibitions. The 5,000 square metre complex will be officially opened June 21st by international star John Denver, who has rescheduled concerts in America to make himself available. Announcing details of the official ceremony today, Kevin Jacobson, a leading Australian promoter, said Newcastle was the first city outside a capital city to boast an entertainment centre. He believes such a complex will change the cultural face of Newcastle.
It brings not only international artists that would not usually come to the city, it stimulates the city in many areas, in the areas of culture and activity, the media.
Mr Jacobson also announced the Soviet Union's Bolshoi Ballet Company will perform at the centre in September. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Chiefs' post-match celebrations were cut short. Back on the paddock preparing for the night's clash with Brisbane. Fresh as a daisy, he says, still on a high after crossing twice for country.
Apart from that, I haven't scored a try in about a year and a half, so to score two in a representative game, I was pretty happy.
His mates Sargent and McCormack were in high spirits. Harrigan too, all smiles, with a blue jumper, now almost a formality.
I had a reasonably solid game and I don't think the two tries would hurt, so with a bit of luck, yeah, on Monday night I'll have my fingers crossed.
No time for celebrations for this man either, country first skipper Trevor Crowe. Today his jumper was definitely on the line. The 30-year-old labourer had to back up for Newcastle club Souths. Last night he was the selector's man of the match.
I thought we were outweighed probably a stone a man last night, but like the guys from the country just stood up and wanted to be counted, and they were.
Only a coin's flip away from the cenotaph in the tiny Hunter Valley town of Morpeth is the Royal Hotel. And at this pub, no one struts their stuff better than 74-year-old Jack Brotherton. When Jack tosses the pennies on Anzac Day, it's a case of come-in spinner for the patrons. Jack learnt to play two-up in the Middle East during World War II. Mind you, he says, the game today is just not the same.
Over there was no beer to drink when we'd play in the camp or anywhere on the beach. We used to just chuck them and the quick bloody result.
And after 50 years of tossing the coins, how's Jack's hip pocket nerve?
I think I bloody lost more over the years.
Once a week, the people of Bandara could do their banking at the National Australia Bank. It provided a valuable service for many of the town's 400 residents. But on Friday, the bank cashed their last cheques. Understandably, many people in Bandara are upset about the closure of their only bank.
Oh, it's a bit of a shock to us all, really, because they rely on here every Friday to get their money and cheques cashed.
The nearest banks are in Inverell, which is about 40 kilometres away.
Capping off a physical weekend, today's 49-kilometre triathlon with more than 350 entrants, many of them ranked among Australia's best. The event began with a 1-kilometre swim around Coffs Harbour Jetty. Suzanne Collinson from Sydney led the ladies out of the water. In the men, Victorian Simon Knowles was first out and from here on maintained that lead. Next, the ride, 38 kilometres of it. For some, it was smooth riding, others needing repair work. Into the last leg, a 10-kilometre run. Back in the field, some were doing it tough. Up front, 22-year-old Knowles kept the pace. The women's changed hands. Natalia Orchard from the Gold Coast forged ahead and crossed the line first in the women's and fifth overall. Knowles set a new record, finishing in 1 hour, 35 minutes. On hand to present the prizes, Australia's top marathoner, Steve Monaghetti.
Rodwell cuts out one to John Schuster. And back slam there right on the 22.
Rodwell looked to have secured first points. Referee Annesley had a long conference with touch judges and then raid after raid fell down. David Boyd and Alan Langer sin-binned. Brisbane first points. Schuster levelled the score just before half-time. It was a frantic second half. Knights fullback Brad Godden saving tries at one end. Julian O'Neill saving them at the other. Then Langer turned on the magic for Kevin Walters. And again for himself. 12-2. It looked to be all over. 12-8. As the full-time hooter sounded, Newcastle was still raiding away.
The Newcastle Waste Management Strategy, which comes before Council tonight, recommends that an investigation be undertaken into the possibility of accepting waste from other areas at the new Summerhill site. Previously, Council has rejected all attempts to turn the site into a regional dump, but that may now change. At a local government seminar at City Hall this morning, noted environmental scientist Michael Worrell said it's only a matter of time before Sydney dumps its waste in the Hunter.
The option facing the Hunter Council is how can they control the impacts of it and turn it into a business that creates wealth for the people in the Hunter.
But talk of importing waste only angers the Maryland Residents Group. Today they issued a warning to aldermen that they could be held personally accountable if the environment is harmed by the dump.
Under the Environmental Offences and Penalties Act, each of the aldermen in their capacity as directors of the council risk fines of up to $250,000 each or a 2-year imprisonment sentence.
According to the management plan, there are 3 main reasons why Summerhill should become a regional facility. Apart from the substantial income it would generate for council, the extra waste would help fill the tip, and the logic is that as the tip fills, residents' concerns disappear. But the residents say that isn't the case.
I'm very concerned that Newcastle is looking at the dollars and cents and sort of organising to have other regional areas come in locally, but I'm very concerned that they're even intending to sort of think about the Sydney Waste project. That is really not for Newcastle.
Air conditioning and refrigeration contractor Cole Whiteford has been trialling what's called the Rapid Legionella test for more than 2 years. Developed by a Sydney research scientist, it involves taking a sample from a commercial cooling system that's then sent to Sydney research laboratories.
It's then mixed in with an antibody. The antibody then homes in like an Exocet missile on the organism and makes it fluoresce green.
Within an hour, Legionella can be detected. Legionnaire's disease has already killed 4 people in Sydney. In the Hunter, 2 people suspected of having the disease have been hospitalised while they await pathology test results. Using the Rapid Legionella test, an industrial or commercial system that's been infected with the bacteria can be detected and decontaminated within a day. Mr Whiteford says in Sydney, a different test using a culture system is being used.
With the culture system, you have to grow the bugs for about 7 to 10 days before you can actually see anything and count anything.
Mr Whiteford believes the speed with which his test isolates the bacteria could prevent it advancing to a level that threatens human contamination. That level is around 1,000 bacteria units or more per 1 millilitre of water. Mr Whiteford says within the last 3 weeks, a couple of venues have registered these levels, but quick detection meant prompt decontamination. Local health authorities acknowledge the merits of the test, but advocate it's not the only answer.
The most important thing is to make sure you have a regular maintenance schedule in buildings where you have air conditioners in use. The thing that we're trying to promote is a register of all of these buildings to be held by the local councils.
Dr Stevenson says council officers could then inspect the sites. Despite authorities' reservations, Mr Whiteford is negotiating with a national engineering company in the hope they'll distribute the test. Like all students training for a career, a major step towards achieving that is graduating. For this group of cuddly canines, that day is tomorrow. The 16-month-old dogs have spent the last 4 months in the Maitland-Newcastle area learning how to become a guide dog.
They've learnt that they must stop at every curb that they come to. They have to be aware of traffic, and they have to actually be willing to disobey a given command if that command would put the person in danger.
Literally the black sheep of the clan, Grayson proved top dog, graduating with honours. He and 6 of his mates will go to Melbourne to become guide dogs. But Zip, the golden retriever, didn't quite make the grade.
He just lacks a little bit of confidence. So whilst he could do everything that we wanted him to, there were times when he'd get a little bit scared.
Zip will now join the association's Petters Therapy Centre, where he'll become a companion to a disabled or aged community member. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
If snakes and cane toads don't interest you, don't worry, there's plenty more that might. There are 200 exhibitors showing their wares aimed at anyone with an interest in working the land from a backyard or hobby farm to a large property. Others just come for the blueberry pie. As well as working demonstrations of equipment, there are tips on land and livestock care and ideas for alternative money spinners to help make your patch pay.
The recession doesn't seem to show directly to us. We've got a bigger attendance with exhibitors, and I believe, I hope, I'm sure that our gate will represent that as well.
You might consider running donkeys, ostriches, alpacas, Highland cattle or even yabbies. Along with a few tempting tasties, there are comprehensive displays of the homegrown and the handmade. The field days are open from 9 to 3:30 over the weekend.
Ten years ago, Elizabeth Dixon's body was found in her car by a passing jogger in what was then bushland at Ashtonfield Estate, East Maitland. Her hands had been tied with football boot laces and she'd been stabbed 27 times in the back and abdomen. The 31-year-old's body was found 3 days after she was last seen alive at a local liquor store at Green Hills. As a result of a recent news article, a fresh lead surfaced. A new 4-man murder task force based at Maitland has been set up. Their investigations into the fresh information has led to further leads.
There's been 3. They're very sensitive and they're the type of things that we can't talk a lot about, but we are hopeful that they will lead us down the right path. That may take days, it could take weeks.
And are these investigations, do they involve local area?
Yes, the local area only at this stage, yes.
The difficulty with long drawn-out cases such as this one is memory lapses of witnesses. Despite this, Chief Superintendent Kane is appealing to anyone with even the slightest recollections of events associated with the murder to come forward.
I'm more than convinced that there is somebody out there that knows something that they're not talking about. They should come forward no matter how mundane or menial they think their information is.
Back on the ground, pilot John Gillette was baffled as to what had gone wrong. He was just 17 kilometres from Taree Airport when his engines partially failed.
The plane began to lose altitude at about 500 feet per minute, and it was necessary to return to Taree.
Inspector Gillette radioed a mayday call and then headed back.
It was fairly well calculated. I did some quick calculations and I estimated that we should have been able to make the airfield with a little bit in reserve, and in effect that is what happened.
Emergency crews were placed on standby, but Inspector Gillette and his 2 passengers landed safely and unhurt.
there was a good possibility we may have had to land in a field. Had we lost any more power, well, this would have been a definite proposition, but fortunately we were able to sustain enough altitude to get back to the airfield at Taree.
.680 athletes will tackle a gruelling course of a 3.8 kilometre swim, a 180k bike ride and to finish off a full marathon of 42.2 k's. And to keep the men and women going, an enormous amount of food and drink will be consumed. Over 20,000 litres of cola, Exceed and water will be forced into aching bodies, with the top triathletes preferring Exceed and H2O. And fruit is a must. 12,000 bananas, 3,000 oranges, plenty of kiwi fruit and rock melon, and also 7,000 cookies and various brands of chocolate will be devoured. On hand to treat those feeling faint, 15 doctors, 50 nurses and a host of support medical staff. We wish them well from 6:15 tomorrow morning from Pacific Palms.
Magnificent men in their flying machine. They go up to the up, they go down to the down. They juggle the ladies and steal.
I would have worn a good hat if I'd have known.
Demand for glider flights was big at Narrabri over the weekend. The Lake Keepit Club was charging just $45 for a chance to soar thousands of feet in the air without an engine, and flights were booked out.
We generally try to go to about 3 towns a year on these little tours to give people the experience of gliding, and we do find it's very popular.
Before going up, first-time gliders were given a brief rundown of the instrument panel.
We'll call it the up and down meter if you like. If the needle's pointing above zero, the plane is going up in the air. If the needle's pointing below zero, well then the glider's just coming down in the air. You know.
So far, the Lake Keepit Club has attracted enthusiasts from all over the state.
Our club at Lake Keepit is not near a major centre of population, so our membership, which is up around about 120, comes from a large area. We have people from Ballina and Byron Bay, Newcastle, Sydney, Wollongong, and most of our membership is in the Tamworth Armidale area.
Mr West says Lake Keepit's remoteness attracts people because there are few queues, and he says it has other attractions.
And it's also an excellent area in which to fly. Lots of good soaring over the mountains up in the Caputau region here, and lots of flat plains and paddocks which give off lots of heat to keep us up.
"67-year-old Bill Lunn has a problem. 2 25-year-old Norfolk Island pines are outgrowing his backyard.
The height of them is one thing, and the root bases, they're making all the damage to the fences and going underneath the neighbours, concrete.
To cut the pines down, Mr Lunn needs council approval or face a $2,000 fine. At the moment, council isn't approving.
They are good, healthy specimens. There is no indication of any bug or anything that might be creating any harm to it.
Mr Lunn says he's at desperation point and has appealed to council to reconsider.
If I'm rejected, I will. I'll do something about it. I don't care if I go to jail.
Mr Hargrave says tonight council will decide on a date to inspect the trees a second time. If Mr Lunn's plea is justified, council may even consider revising its tree preservation policy. The issue, it seems, is not an isolated one. Further up the Hunter, here in the historic town of Morpeth near Maitland, it appears a similar battle is brewing.
Well, I've made an application to the council to chop it down. The reasons to chop it down are because there's pine cones falling on the ground which are quite dangerous for young children, leaves in the gutter, and possibly in a large storm it may blow over onto the house.
Mr Richard's tree is a 100-year-old bunya pine. Earlier this year, Maitland Council permitted the lopping of a similar bunya pine. According to Mr Richards, the precedent's now been set. Not allowing him to lop his tree shows an inconsistency in Council's preservation policy.
The council refuse it. It shows a complete double standard within the community. If they allow it, it's going to cause an absolute furore within the community.
Council disagrees. Its strategic planner, Mr Richard Bennett, says the preservation order isn't inconsistent. The circumstances of both trees were different. Despite this, Mr Richards believes it's time for Council to review its preservation order, and he's now applying to have his case reconsidered by Council. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The first stage of the 6-stage Riverview Ridge Estate project has been completed and approval has been given for the immediate development of a second stage, a 32-block subdivision for medium-density residential and commercial retail buildings. The blocks will be auctioned next Tuesday. Port Stephens Shire President Bob Horn says the development is in keeping with the region's continuing growth.
Raymond Terrace in particular is the fastest growing area in our shire. We're now a dormitory area to the industrial areas of Newcastle, Maitland and so on. We are a very central area in the Hunter Valley.
The solid population growth is underpinned by the region's major employers, including RAF Base Williamtown and the expansion of the Tomago aluminium plant. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
This is a classic Australian drama. Monk O'Neill is a hermit living in a shack in northern Victoria. He reminisces about his life. While some of the tales are true, others are perhaps a stretch of the imagination. Sean Scully has the demanding task of performing this one-man play.
The secret really is enjoying it, and if I can enjoy it, then I think the audience can enjoy it. And whether I can enjoy it or not for an hour and a half is, something that I'll just have to find out, because it's the first one-man show I've ever done.
A stretch of the imagination will open at the Civic Playhouse tomorrow night and run for a month. Jane Anderson, NBN News.